Welcome back to my channel. Fair warning, but you'll probably find this to be a very boring video. Why? Because it's all about my background. You see, sometimes in my past videos, I felt like my background gave me some insights into the subjects I was talking about. But I left out that information because just as low-level men will attack a woman's appearance no matter how attractive she actually is, the same kind of people will make attacks based on any personal information they can get. So I figured it simplified things to just leave out my background for a while. Yet I always planned to provide it at some point, after I had already established myself with many other videos. Besides, at this point, if people want to make an issue out of any of this information, it would just provide me with more examples of troll tactics. So while I prefer to not have to deal with trollish behavior, I have no problem using their childish attacks against them. I sort of specialize in doing that. By childish, I mean things like calling me a simp instead of dealing with my arguments. I've even been accused of, wait for it, once being in high school band. Yes, really. That seems to be an important issue to, idiots. I think to trolls, that ranks right up there with calling someone a nerd. You know, someone who the high school cool kids end up working for. I find it amusing that most trolls appreciate music, so why have an issue with people who actually make music? Well, besides the fact that trolls are extremely childish. But it gets worse, because I also decided to become a band director. More on that in a moment. I graduated high school, barely, because outside of band, I was a lazy student. Drove my guidance counselors crazy, but at least I realized going straight to college wouldn't be a good idea. I may have been lazy, but I wasn't stupid. I knew I had some growing up to do. So instead of college, I joined the Navy for 4 years. Then I went to college since I was ready to really apply myself. In fact, in spite of my high school record, I graduated college with honors and distinction. Almost all of my grades were A's, and I finished in less than 4 years while also taking more courses than required. In fact, a lot of class hours in the music field aren't counted like they are elsewhere. Therefore, we have more class time for fewer credits. For example, take a 3-hour semester course in U.S. history and you go to class 3 hours a week. But in the music field, taking music history, I still went to class 3 hours a week, but it was only worth 2 hours credit. Or take band class. You'll have 3 hours a week in class and only get 1 hour credit. Not only that, but it doesn't count the after-class practices the first semester for marching season. That adds another 10 hours. So 13 hours a week for 1 lousy credit. It also doesn't count the time to practice music outside of class. Individual practice took more time than studying for any other subject. Yet all this only earned 1 credit hour. Anyway, as I neared graduation, my college advisor told me I should aim for teaching in college. But I told him I didn't want to. When he asked why, I told him that I had watched how immature so many college students were. Seems a lot of students straight out of high school were that way. And if I was going to teach immature people, it made more sense to do it at the middle school and high school levels, where maybe I could help them be more responsible before they went to college. I was pretty successful in my teaching, based on awards my band and individual students received, plus attracting a higher percentage of students to the activity. But what I'm actually proud of is that I did this even though I tended to take over jobs where the band was either not very good or was on a downward slide. Much like you hear coaches refer to having a rebuilding year, so they aren't expected to do well the upcoming year. But I don't believe in rebuilding years. I got that attitude from a high school football coach who was successful year after year with no lapses. He just made the most of what he had, and his students responded positively to that attitude. However, I'm not just about band. For decades, I debated politics, social issues, economics, etc. Some people, at least foolish ones, would claim that I didn't have the background to discuss such things. Having someone say, "You're just a band director," wasn't uncommon. But I've seriously followed national politics since 1960. Not just some 30-minute daily TV news coverage, which is what we had back then, but lots of newspapers, magazines, and books. I don't know how many books, but it was certainly more than the typical college student would read who majored in any of these areas. The point is, it doesn't matter what someone's main interest is or what they choose as a career. They can still inform themselves about many things. You don't even need to go to college to be well informed. As I cover future subjects, this research may come into play, but so will just being a band director. However, for now, this video is just giving a broad background in one place. I will point out one other thing that is particularly important to me and what my goals were. Yes, I was a band director, but that isn't how I viewed my job. Instead, I felt my job was to develop young people into responsible, hardworking adults, people you can count on. Band was just a vehicle I used to achieve that. After all, band is typically the biggest team in a school, and just as with athletics, every member depends on all the other members doing their job and developing individual skills. In band, you rarely have bench warmers, and if you do, it is typically a very small number, usually less than 10. And chances are those are freshmen who may still have coordination problems so they can't stay in step. However, in my band, I never had substitutes. If you were doing your best, even if you couldn't stay in step or had other major weaknesses, I still included every member in performances. It was the effort that meant more to me than the result. That's key to education. Before bringing this to a close, let me give a real-life example of this. I took over a band which had been doing fairly well. However, based on who was graduating, the director knew the band was going to be much worse the next year, so he moved on. Worse, when students learned he was leaving, a lot more chose to not sign up for band. This had nothing to do with me because they quit before I was even hired. So a one-year problem turned into a multi-year challenge as the students, their parents, and all the administrators warned me. They expected it to take at least 3 years to recover. I didn't say anything, but I didn't accept such low expectations. As we got into late summer band practices just before school resumed, the band officers came to see me because they were concerned about one of the other band members. He was a senior, yet he had never gotten to march in the performances. The reason was he was the most uncoordinated student I've ever seen. I spent a lot of extra time with him trying to help, but he just couldn't stay in step. Yet I kept him in the show. So these officers were very concerned. Their prior director would never have let him march. They first asked if I was going to let him march. I said yes. Then they said, but he will hurt our scores at contests. I asked them if he marched poorly because he wasn't trying or because he just couldn't do it. They all agreed he tried harder than anyone. So I said that was why I'd let him march. When they again expressed concern about contest scores, I told them that, yes, a judge may see him out of step and take off a little bit from our score. However, I also pointed out that any judge would see that everyone else was marching exceptionally well and would therefore know they were taught well and worked hard. And that meant they would realize this particular student simply had a coordination problem. So it would only hurt the band a little. Sure, in a very tight competition, it could cost us first place. But that was an acceptable price to pay for this student to get a full band education. Happily, the officers agreed with me, and as it turned out, that band earned more trophies than any other year in their history, including first place. But that was just a bonus in my mind. I was more interested in developing good people. Thanks for watching, and don't let the trolls stop you from speaking out.